Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. Today happens to be the 68th birthday of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He's, as we speak, in Varanasi, where he's been interacting with school kids and telling them a story about his life. Let's go get those visuals out on your screens. Over the course of the next 60 minutes, we're trying to do something different here on television prime time. We often hear about the politics surrounding Narendra Modi. We are in the midst of a very vitriolic election season that is currently going on, and a lot of things get said, a lot of report cards are demanded, and all that of course needs to play out in the realm of political dumb is playing out. But behind all of this thing, what curiosity demands is the man who told us that from a chaiwala how he rooted his career to become the Prime Minister of this country, and like he would like to call himself the Pradhan Sevak. Who is the man behind the Prime Minister? What we've done today and tonight is we have gathered together 4 or 5 people who have quite literally written the book on Narendra Modi. They are authors and senior journalists who have done a lot of research on Narendra Modi himself, on his childhood, his teenage years, his time in the RSS, his entry into politics, his time as the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and of course his time not only as Prime Minister but an understanding of what his outlook means, not only as a human being, as an individual, the moments of life that shaped him to what he is today and what he represents. Let me open up this conversation by introducing who all is joining us on the broadcast. We have Sudesh Verma, who is a member today of the BJP, was a journalist, is a lawyer, and wrote the book on Narendra Modi. It's called Game Changer Narendra Modi. Kingshuk Nag, another author who's written a compelling work on Narendra Modi, is joining us from Hyderabad. Mr. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, who's also an author, he's written a book on Narendra Modi, the name is at the bottom of your screens, is also joining us. He's joining us from Delhi. Bharat Karnad, who's written an authoritative work on Narendra Modi's strategic and foreign policy looking ahead, is also joining us this evening, as is Sheila Bhatt, our National Affairs Editor, who has known Narendra Modi's and watched him very carefully for decades, well before he was in the limelight of Indian politics. Before we open this up to all our authors, let's take a glimpse of what we understand and what we know of Narendra Modi. We've compiled together a few snippets for you about a few things that sometimes in the rough and tumble of politics we forget, but are very telling, and in the life story of somebody who writes the history of our times will be very compelling. Let's listen into some of those snippets, and then I come to all the authors joining us on the broadcast tonight.
Born on 17th September 1950 to a humble family in Gujarat, Narendra Modi is the third son of Damodar Das and Hiraben Modi. He joined the RSS as a Bal Sevak when he was 8. He was engaged against his wish at the age of 13. Narendra Modi soon left his home. He travelled across India in his youth and even spent 2 years as a sannyasi with the yogic sadhus in the Himalayas. In 1972, Modi formally joined the RSS at the age of 22. Working his way towards politics, he barely saved himself from getting arrested during the emergency. In 1987, Modi joined the BJP, entering the mainstream. Soon thereafter, he was elected as the BJP General Secretary of Gujarat. Quick to work his way up, 8 years later, Modi became the National Secretary of the BJP. He came to be known within the political circles for his planning abilities. A master planner, Modi became the National General Secretary of the BJP in 1998. In 2001, circumstances led to him taking over as the Chief Minister of Gujarat. In 2002, he once again became the Chief Minister, but this time by winning the people's mandate. He holds the record for longest-serving Chief Minister of Gujarat. In 2007, he came back to power in Gujarat once again. His journey as the Gujarat Chief Minister continued well after, as he came back to serve as the Chief Minister for the 4th consecutive time in 2012. With the backing of an impressive track record, Narendra Modi became the face of the BJP as the party planned a comeback in the Lok Sabha elections. On 20th May 2014, the Bharatiya Janata Party won the biggest mandate in the last 30 years with 282 seats. At the centre of it was India's 14th Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
Okay, let's open up this conversation. Let me begin with, if I can, with Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, what is of Narendra Modi as a young man that the people in this country don't really know about but should?
You know, there are two different aspects of Mr. Modi's entire personality. One is the man and the other is his politics. Now, as far as his man is concerned, you know, it's really been an incredible story in the sense, you know, that the kind of a background that he's come up, you know, is really very fascinating. It's full of struggles. It is not that he's the only leader who has struggled from a very hard way out. But yes, it really stands out because even within the RSS and the BJP where he's grown, he really was an outsider in many senses. You know, like you said, 72, when he actually formally joined the RSS, his peers at that point, you know, for instance, we're talking about Mohan Bhagwat, who just delivered this evening a lecture as the Satsang Chalak. Now, he at that time was also a young, you know, Swayam Sevak. But the advantage that Mohan Bhagwat had was that he had a father, you know, who had been in the RSS earlier. You know, in fact, Madhukarao Bhagwat, somebody who mentored Modi in the early years. Now, Mr. Modi did not have any family background within the RSS. So it becomes very important the fact that he was able to rise, he was able to find the right patrons at the right time to get promoted, to be given very crucial assignments solely because of his skill and ability, something, you know, which must be appreciated.
Okay.
His politics and the controversy related to it is completely different.
Okay, as you were doing your research, Mr. Mukhopadhyay, in a quite compelling book that you've written, and I was speaking to you about this earlier in the day, as you were doing your research, what struck you the most?
Yeah. You know, I would say that the most important thing which has really struck me is that when I first got to know Mr. Modi until for several years, till he actually became a prime ministerial aspirant, when this entire story of his poor background, his having been chaiwala, his coming from an OBC community, you know, these were the things that Mr. Modi never really talked about. He was never a person who wanted to encash his poverty stricken. So that is what really.
Okay, just stay with me, sir. We are just getting that an audio line connection problem with you sorted out. There's lack of network, I think. Let me invite in Kingshuk Nag, who's joining us from Hyderabad, who's written yet another compelling work on Narendra Modi. Mr. Nag, a very good evening and welcome to Telecast. Let me put the same question to you. When we talk of Modi as a young boy, growing up, there are some fascinating stories that are out there in the literary medium that a lot of people watching this broadcast might not be aware of. Which of these anecdotal stories do you think are the most telling of what the man would later become?
I think the most telling thing is that he wanted to become somebody big and therefore he ignored. He wanted to rise above his circumstances and therefore he did not even consider marriage, and when he was forced to marry also, after a few years he took a decision to leave home, and he possibly went to the Himalayas, and then he came back and he chose a path that is less traveled. That's the most important thing about him. He is not the usual run-of-the-line guy, sort of guy, and he came to Ahmedabad from his village and he took refuge at a tea stall and became the manager there, because he didn't want to live in his village. He wanted to do something big, and such people, when they are there, they get their chance of good luck. And he soon came into contact with some office bearers of the RSS, some junior office bearers of the RSS who invited him to the RSS, and thereafter he became a very important person. The most important thing to know is that he left his home because he thought he had a mission in life. He did not want to stay. So this enabled him to rise much above his own circumstances. And I think that's the most important thing about him, that he's got the ability to rise above his circumstances. He's a very determined sort of a guy. If he decides to do something, he will ultimately do it only.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Okay. You know, let me ask you the same follow-up question. When you were writing the book, sir,
but those are different.
And doing research on Narendra Modi, somebody whom you're whose career you were already familiar with, what struck you as an author? The curiosity, which of course that made you write the book. What struck you the most?
The fact of the matter is that I started writing a book after I came to know him, because he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat and I was the resident editor of Times of India in Gujarat. So I had a personally I was acquainted with him, and being in that place in Ahmedabad, we heard a lot of stories about him, about his youth. Then we heard stories about in his village, and the idea was to collate all the things. And as I told you, the most fascinating thing about him is he's a highly determined sort of guy. And in those days, he was very, very open, and he would come to the newspaper office. In fact, when he was not a Chief Minister, I believe he used to come to the Times of India office in Ahmedabad, and I would sit there for hours together with correspondents. After he became Chief Minister, which was the time I was the resident editor, even just after he became the Chief Minister, he came and called on me, which was very, very surprising. But in other places, journalists rush to the Chief Minister and call on them. But here, the Chief Minister himself called me and came to call on me with his entourage.
What were you were mentioning some stories of you heard about his time when he was still in his village. What were the stories? Can you share some of them with us?
Some of the stories I don't recollect just now. Basically, he was a determined sort of guy who, his father used to have a tea stall, and part-time he used to had a tea stall on the railway station. His father was a grocer who also used to sell tea in Vadnagar, that is the place he was born in. And in that Vadnagar station, trains would only come, there were 2 or 3 trains which would come, and in the morning on the way to school, his father would rope him in. So Mr. Modi would go there, help his father to dispense that tea, then he would run across to his school and come back in the evening. And when in 1965, I think, or 62 maybe, no, 65, when there was a war with Pakistan, a lot of these Indian army chaps would come from Kutch and Bhuj. So Mr. Modi would be there to serve tea to these guys at the behest of his father. And there's that, I think, that imbued in him a sense of nationalism, I think.
Okay.
And in that sense, there are many other stories, of course.
Okay, well, fascinating. And I'll come back to you in just a second, sir, to hear the rest of them. And Nilanjanji wants to come in, and then I quickly want to go to rope in Bharat Karnad also. Yeah. Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, just on the same vein, sir. During the course of your research, I'm sure you also heard the stories, the stuff that we don't know about Modi as a pre-teen, as a teenager. What is worth knowing about?
I learned something very interesting from a school teacher of his who I met, during a visit to Vadnagar. That when he was in school, still fairly young, he liked going on stage. He was very passionate about acting. These are things, which kind of education, the path that Modi eventually followed.
Okay, unfortunately, just when I come to you, we are having a difficulty which I'm sure my producers will sort out. Let me take the opportunity to get Bharat Karnad into the conversation. He's written a book called Staggering Forward, Modi and India's Global Ambitions. Bharat Karnad, what was your purpose in researching a book? Your, of course, expertise lies in strategic foreign affairs, the bigger picture of India. When showcasing or studying Modi's examples, what prompted you to write that book?
No, basically because I think he promised so much in terms of vaulting India into the top rank of nations and so on. And it's the promise he made to the country during the last election season, the last election campaign, I mean. And the idea was to do an audit of his foreign and military policies in the main. And that's what the book is about. I've of course taken the looked at some economic policy, but that's not my expertise. And I relied on the biographies of Mr. Modi by several people, including Nilanjan, whom you have on the show. So this is an audit really of his performance as Prime Minister, because it's a very centrally run government and regime, top down. Now, most of the views that form the policies are really Mr. Modi's ideas. That have been
Bharat Karnad, how in your opinion, during the course of your research and understanding, did a person who is self-admittedly from a very humble background, has been then serving as a chief minister for a record number of times, then emerging into a domain where things like foreign policy, strategic policy suddenly fall onto your lap, that transition, how do you think it was made?
No, I think it was much easier than one would imagine, simply because I think when he was Pracharak with the RSS, he traveled a number of times to the United States and was there hosted by RSS supporters and so on in America and elsewhere, in North America. And he's traveled extensively through the United States, through some 29 states, more than many of us who have lived there in America. So you have this foreign policy which is really what I call aspirational, in terms of the fact that he was hugely impressed by the order, the cleanliness, the wealth, the technological savvy of the United States. And it's something that I think I suppose he would like to imagine that India will attain sometime in the future. That's the kind of the aims and goals he set himself.
Okay, that's fascinating of the experiences, and we've seen the photographs. We've seen Narendra Modi speak of his visits to the United States several times also. I need to take a short break. Let me quickly get Nilanjanji, who's back with us. Nilanjanji, you were trying to say something. Sorry, we got interrupted. Go ahead.
No, we have moved ahead than what I was trying to say, that basically that in school, he had been a very keen debater and loved acting. But I was listening to Bharat, I think, I want to make a very quick point that more than his success in foreign policy, what Mr. Modi has really succeeded is that he's been able to enlist the Indian diaspora for his own party and for the entire Sangh Parivar. Mr. Modi has engaged with the Indian diaspora like no other Prime Minister has ever done. And, it is something, which the RSS has tried to do for a long time. They've been out for about 40 to 50 years, right from the African coast. That's where the RSS started a foreign engagement, then they moved to Europe and then to the Americas. But Mr. Modi has really made it, into giving some kind of a new Hindu, rock star. If I can really use that word, his Madison Square
rock
Garden,
star.
really being the template for leaders to follow thereafter.
I need to slip into a very short
Hindu
break.
rock star.
Okay, and on the other side, we rope in Sheila Bhatt and Sudesh Verma also. Back in a couple of minutes. Stay with us. Alright, we're back with a fascinating group of people who, as I mentioned, have literally written the book on Narendra Modi. Let me introduce two more. Sheila Bhatt, one of the most senior journalists in our country, and somebody I have had the privilege over the past few months of talking about Narendra Modi and learning a lot through her. Sheila Bhatt, tell us something about Narendra Modi that as a public entity we should know, about his childhood, about his teen years that we don't really know about.
See, first of all, Narendra Modi is not an easy man to know. Even after meeting many years, you will feel that he has too many layers within him. Because how many people who at the age of 18 leave house and for 2 years wandering around, first to Belur Math, then in Rajkot, Ramakrishna Mission, and then in Himalaya. He was 25 kilometers away from a Kedarnath temple for many, many months, when he was not even 20, and then suddenly coming to Ahmedabad, living near Kankaria RSS headquarters, and then in one room which became his quite a steady room for many years, and then studying in MA, again joining Gujarat University, because I first time met him in either in 81 or 82, exact year I don't remember, but certainly before 83, because he completed MA in political science from Gujarat University, and his teacher was my guardian, Professor Praveen Sheth. So I would say that what Modi is in a public image is exactly not the same man. I mean, he is very different also. He has many layers, as I said before. So, but interesting thing today, let us talk about today, 2018, September, Modi. So first of all, on a birthday, we are in a news business, we must tell about today, what happened today. I think biggest birthday gift Mohan Bhagwat has given him in form of a speech.
In the speech
because this speech is a very layered, very loaded, very nuanced, because in that RSS founder, total Congress connection, how he was a Congress office bearer, how he worked with the top Congress leaders, and how he synchronized his movement with a freedom movement and Congress's movement. So it was all very well in a simple, direct and with a clarity he spoke in Vigyan Bhavan. So I think it's a very good, because this speech will help Modi, because one of the biggest negatives going up against the Modi government is this vicious and toxic atmosphere of lynching.
Yes.
So it doesn't go. It doesn't speak well of any government.
It's the softer, more approachable RSS.
Yes.
Where of course the roots lie.
No, in this speech he has praised Congress, he has praised Communist also in some manner. So it's a very, very interesting speech, and I think it will help Modi government as a whole.
All right.
And second thing I want, last thing
please.
I want to add about 2018 Modi, that today is 68, and I'm sure Modi must be thinking, knowing him for many years, that he has only 8 years left maximum, 7 years left to do something big for India, for his rule during his tenure. So I think he is running against time, and he must be in a very fast-forward mood.
Fast-forward mood. Okay. So Sudesh Verma, incidentally, for those of us joining us, and maybe you don't know this, you see him on NewsX very often, he's a journalist. He exited the journalism business to write the book before, of course, now joining the Bharatiya Janata Party. It's called Game Changer Narendra Modi. Sudesh Verma, what did you find when researching for Game Changer Narendra Modi? What is it that you found?
Quite contrary to what Sila was saying. I found him to be a very simple man, and he's almost like a mirror, you know. You go with the kind of impression and you get that kind. Because I tell you, I had many moments where I told him very clearly that I have not come here to talk to Chief Minister. I want to know your inner side, which people are interested, and I'm going to write about it. He never asked me anything that I don't write. And those moments, you know, I found that he went into trance. I could rediscover his spirituality.
Explain, tell us what does that mean?
I'll tell you, like I asked him that, how do you see about your life? Then he was saying, he was giving reference to, you know, in the Kutch, there is area where birds come, the Serbian birds, and they lay their eggs. He was saying, Sudesh, you won't believe that the eggs are laid in such a way, it appears that God has made the design, the same distance, you know, all the eggs. Well, it's a marvel of nature. But we don't know what God wants. And an episode came about, you know, he used to burn all his past clothes or belongings. So why? He said, why to link with the past? Because we have to go on working for the future. Because past is going to hold you. And this, if you find as a philosophy also, he did not bother much about the past. He always wanted to improve upon himself. You were talking about how a person who comes from a background of Vadnagar, that was a village when he was there, born in 1950. And if you see the Vadnagar station, 2 trains used to come and go. And when train would come, he is still sitting in the school, and he would run because the distance is not much, so that he could catch up before the train arrives at the station, and sell tea and make some money for his family.
Okay. It's a fascinating study, and it's something, of course, for the kids that he's meeting to read up on, learn about, and hopefully be inspired by. Niranjan Mukhopadhyay, just on that note of that transition of a person who has, of course, needs to be very subtle, needs to know, needs to understand politics, needs to understand governance and the complexities of running a state, of a political party, of an election campaign, versus the simplicity of thought.
Sorry, what did you exactly ask?
That's the question. Where's the balance between the simplicity of thought, the clarity of thought, and the extremely complex and sometimes very convoluted measures that require running a political party in a country?
You know, I had asked Mr. Modi when I was doing the book that when you became the Chief Minister, you had never held an elected position, so how did you actually get down to running a government and leading a party which was at that point in a fair amount of political crisis. So he said that the basic advantage with him was that he had been in the RSS, and RSS, I remember this phrase which he said, that the RSS teaches most importantly human resource management, as to how to manage different people. He said that is what team leader are made in the RSS. So he says running a government or running a party, all that you do is basically have clarity of thought, be certain of what you want to do and know how to manage different people, identify the right man for the right job. Now this worked very perfectly in Gujarat. There have been deficiencies as after he became Prime Minister, because the size of what he has to manage has become much bigger.
Of course.
So probably the same method has not worked in that case.
Human
which is why a
resource
large number of
management
questions are being raised.
in leadership. Clarity in terms of leadership. It's a fascinating conversation. We're not leaving it there. I need to slip into a very short break. My colleague Neha carries it forward with all our guests who are staying on with us. In just 2 minutes, we're back.
Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX. I'm Neha Khanna. It's Prime Minister Modi's 68th birthday today. A seasoned politician and administrator, but seen till 4 years ago as a quintessential outsider to the corridors of power in Delhi. But all that changed when Mr. Modi, who had humble beginnings as a chaiwala, won a historic mandate in 2014, bursting onto the national scene, not just creating history in the process, but also rewriting the rules of the game. Most describe him as one of the most powerful prime ministers the country has ever had. His critics say he's a polarizing figure. His supporters say he is the most popular man in the country today, someone whose charisma is unrivaled and who his opponents simply cannot measure up to. Is that true? Perhaps we'll know only in 2019. But on the show, we'll talk about the man, the politician, the prime minister, who continues to be an enigma to many, even as he leads a nation of 1.25 billion people.
Born into a humble family of grocers in Vadnagar, Gujarat, Narendra Modi is the third of 5 sons. As a child, he helped his father sell tea on the railway station and managed a tea stall with his brother. Often described by his teachers as an average student, young Narendra Modi shone through as an avid debater. As a young boy, Narendra Modi also had an interest in theatre and acted in several school plays. Described as extremely disciplined by the people who knew him as a kid, Narendra Modi always stood out for his creaseless uniform. He had a penchant for dressing well, a habit that has continued. While he joined the RSS much later, he started attending training sessions at the age of 8. There, he met Lakshman Rao Inamdar, popularly known as Vakil Sahib, who inducted him as an RSS junior cadet and became his political mentor. Narendra Modi was also an NCC cadet, but was never selected to come to Delhi. After finishing high school, a young Narendra left home to travel India and feed his fascination with yogis and meditation. He officially joined the RSS at the age of 22.
भारत का चरित्र अजय रहने का है, विजयी रहने का है, लेकिन किसी के हक को छीनना ये भारत का चरित्र नहीं है। लेकिन जब कोई टेररिज्म एक्सपोर्ट करने का उद्योग बना करके बैठा हो, मेरे देश के निर्दोष नागरिकों को मौत के घाट उतार दिया जाता हो, युद्ध लड़ने की ताकत नहीं है, पीठ पर वार करने के प्रयास होते हो, तो ये मोदी है, उसी भाषा में जवाब देना जानता है। लोहिया जी स्वच्छता का आंदोलन चलाते थे, आप लोहिया जी की कोई भी बात देखेंगे तो स्वच्छता के लिए देश में महात्मा गांधी के बाद पूरी ताकत से आवाज उठाई हो तो लोहिया जी ने उठाई। और मैं मानता हूं कि क्योंकि लोहिया जी ने उठाई थी इसलिए मोदी जी ने हाथ नहीं लगाना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। अगर लोहिया जी ने अच्छी बात कही है तो मोदी जी ने उस रास्ते पर चलने में गर्व करना चाहिए।
मैं जानता हूं मैंने कैसे कैसी ताकतों से लड़ाई मोल ली है। मैं जानता हूं कैसे कैसे लोग मेरे खिलाफ हो जाएंगे। मैं जानता हूं 70 साल का उनका मैं लूट रहा हूं, मुझे जिंदा नहीं छोड़ेंगे, मुझे बर्बाद करके रहेंगे। उनको जो करना है करे। 50 साल भाइयों बहनों, 50 दिन मेरी मदद करे, देश 50 दिन मेरी मदद करे। जोर से तालियों के साथ मेरी इस बात को स्वीकार कीजिए आप।
My to-do list is long and ambitious, but you will understand it includes a vibrant rural economy with a robust farm sector, a roof over each head and electricity for all households. To skill millions of our youth, build 100 smart cities, have a broadband for 1 billion, and connect our villages to the digital world.
All right, and on this special broadcast, we are joined by very special guests. These are analysts, commentators, people who followed Narendra Modi, the politician and the Prime Minister, very closely, and in fact, written books on the life and times of Narendra Modi. Let me quickly introduce our panel. Sheila Bhatt, our National Affairs editor, is here with me in the studio, as is Sudesh Verma, BJP spokesperson, King Chung Nang, an author, Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, author and well-known commentator, as well as Bharat Karnad, author and well-known foreign affairs expert. Sheila Bhatt, let me begin with you. You know, I was going through an article that you wrote on Prime Minister Modi many years ago, before he became the Prime Minister. One of the many things that you wrote about him in that article was that Modi has no best friend. He is a loner. Would you say, as someone who's followed him very closely for a long time, especially over the last 4 years as the Prime Minister, that it is this characteristic, this personality trait that has come to perhaps, you know, dominate his style of functioning? Because many have said very often that he is somebody who believes in micromanaging. His, of course, critics say that it's a one-man government. And, you know, he is believed to be this hands-on politician who is on top of all important issues, and that the buck finally does stop with Narendra Modi. Every major decision taken by this government, no matter which ministry it may pertain to, ultimately the decision and the nod has to come from Narendra Modi. Some also say, well, he may be the Prime Minister of 1.25 billion people, but the style of functioning is still of that of a chief minister.
No, so what's the question?
So the question is, do you think that this characteristic, you describing him as a loner, is something that has come to define his style of functioning?
No. What I have written is, in his personal life, he has no friends. But I don't think when he's sitting in the seat of Prime Minister, I think within his team, he's a very good leader, because even in personal life and in his functioning style, most of the officers who started with him have remained with him, and not much of a mobility is there in his core team. And even with Amit Shah since 1987, their Jugalbandi is quite old.
Absolutely.
So in personal life, I think he's still a loner.
Okay.
He doesn't, and you know, we must remember that you, me and everybody else, we have a life like on Holi, in Diwali, on birthdays. So what does he do? I remember before he became chief minister, say 81 to 2001, at least that much I know, after that it's public, that every Diwali he will go to just some interesting place in India and never celebrate with people. He will go to the places and just alone and spend Diwali in isolation. And he was not a man who would sit in a party types and never. So in that sense I am saying a loner. And secondly, food is the most important thing in our, one of the most important things, and he is very frugal little in that sense. That's why, you know, we need friendship to share food. But he normally bhakri, khichdi, sabji, so not much. And again, third thing, I think he used to read a lot of till he was 40 at least. And you must be.
And apparently he follows news about himself very, very closely. Even if he doesn't like giving too many interviews, apparently he does follow the news very closely.
And, and majorly he would remain well informed.
Absolutely. That's Narendra Modi for you. Certainly a very interesting insight into the man. Sudesh Verma, you are here not just in your capacity as a BJP spokesperson, but as somebody who's actually written a book on Mr. Modi. What were your early impressions of the man? And we're talking about a time when he was seen as, you know, being a front runner for the post of Prime Minister. You know, as I was saying earlier on the show, that his critics say that he has a dictatorial style of functioning. His supporters say, you know, the man has the kind of charisma which cannot be rivaled by any politician in the country today.
See, I agree that he is a very spiritual person, and because of this spirituality, he is able to think of society. And I have seen that in all the talks I had, if you talk to him, he talks in terms of finding solutions. I could be an instrument, you could be an instrument, anybody who can give a solution to problems of society. And for this you have to go back to the background where he had seen discrimination. He had acted in a Pilu Fool drama which he enacted. He was an actor himself. And he saw that how Dalits were discriminated, how people behaved. So that thing shaped his idea to transform society, to come out of discrimination. So every decision he takes, even now, you see, like the ministers also, you are a minister, you are scared of taking a decision because you do not know what actually he wants. He wants a better India. If you are taking a decision for the good of society, even if you go wrong, you won't mind. But if you have taken it for personal interest, with some aggrandizement, then you have things to worry about. So all the bureaucrats he's talking about, like Polonius said in Hamlet, friends thou hast and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy heart with hoops of steel. And this is what he does. Those who can deliver, those who have proven track record, he trusts them. And it is but natural, whether it is Amit Shah or whether it is a bureaucrat or whether it is anyone. And we are all instruments of Modi's vision for the great India. Because he has nothing to take away. What will he take? From whom?
You're saying he is a man who works selflessly, a doer, a problem solver. All right, this is a fascinating conversation which we will continue. My director tells me I need to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation with the rest of our panel. Stay tuned. Welcome back. On the occasion of his 68th birthday, we're still talking about the man, the politician, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let me now go across to Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, you know, another very interesting comment that was made by Sheila Bhatt in that article that she wrote about Narendra Modi a few years ago was that he can be dubbed as one of the best copywriters in contemporary India. No Indian advertising agency is likely to match his ability to paraphrase ideas, launch new brands, relaunch people and events, rewrite copies to sell ideas of products as he does. Now, is that the biggest strength of the man? Modi, the charming orator, Modi, the dream merchant, Modi, you know, a politician who can reach out to people, connect with people, but does there lie an inherent danger there, maybe of sometimes over-promising and under-delivering? How do you look at it?
You know, I think if you really look at Mr. Modi and try to understand that what has possibly been the single biggest reason for his success, it has been this amazing ability to personalize himself if you look at all his speeches, you know, in the last 4 years, you know, it is always my government. It is never our government. You know, he always speaks in first person singular, and he is able to convince people. It makes completely irrelevant anyone else, you know, not just in the opposition but even in his party. No one really matters except Mr.
Okay. We're having terrible luck today with Mr. Mukhopadhyay's line. So sorry about that, sir. We'll try and fix it. But let me go across to Bharat Karnad at this point. Mr. Karnad, you know, we heard Mr. Mukhopadhyay earlier make the point that Mr. Modi, for example, is somebody who has managed to connect with the Indian diaspora on a global stage like no other leader before. You know, he's come to be described as a rock star prime minister. We saw the kind of reception he got at Madison Square Garden. And yet his critics and the opposition would say, well, you know, the foreign policy track record has been somewhat checkered. How would you look at the last 4 years and his performance on that front?
Well, look, what you said is true. The diaspora is a great support base for him, and they hurrah him along and his successes. The problem, though, is that he believes in what you talked about, personalizing his politics. He has also personalized his foreign policy, you know, his hugging and embracing foreign leaders, often to their astonishment and so on. And what the problem is that he thinks that by being very personable with him, you know, those people will see India's problems the way Modi sees it. That's not how things operate.
Right.
They may reciprocate his hugs and embraces, but then act exactly according to their national interest. That is something I don't think he's quite understood.
Yes.
And that is the reason why many of his foreign policy initiatives haven't borne fruit. For instance, his initiative to have close relations with the United States.
United States and China.
Because, you know, I mean, our interests diverge. And China. So President Xi has very different interests about what China means to what he has in mind for China to do.
Right.
Trump has his very own agenda that is going to pursue at the expense, if necessary, of India's interests.
Absolutely.
And here I think the
and there is perhaps a disconnect there, you were saying.
To bridge that gap between his talk and his achievement.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and we have to remember...
And he's more, I think, he's unable to translate his...
Okay, I take your point that there is a gap there, and at the end of the day we have to remember that foreign policy is about pragmatism and is about national interest. It may not be so much about personal equations. Mr. King Chung Nang, sir, my apologies for keeping you waiting. I will give you the last word because with this I'll have to wrap up the show. How would you sum up the last 4 years of Modi as Prime Minister? Because we are now in an election year. You know, there are some who would say 2019 is wide open, and then there are many others, Mr. Modi's supporters, who would say there is not a single politician in the country who can measure up to Modi's charisma. Therein lies his biggest strength and the opposition's weakness, and this is what he's going to tap into come 2019.
I'll take a larger point. The fact is that the Indian Republic was formed by Mr. Nehru, and thereafter we had a host of Congress Prime Ministers and other party Prime Ministers like Janata Dal also, and even Mr. Vajpayee. But they were part of the First Republic. And when Mr. Modi took over as Prime Minister, he set rolling the ball for a Second Republic. That is a work which is still continuing. It will probably continue for many years. So Mr. Modi is a very important person. After Nehru, who formed the First Republic, we have Mr. Modi, who is forming the Second Republic. I am not saying that everybody will love whatever he is doing, but you have to recognize that he is a major point in the country, and after Mr. Nehru. So his place in history is fixed and permanent.
Well, there is no doubt.
What he will do what will happen in the election, we don't know.
We don't know, absolutely.
What it looks possibly be.
I think it has to be said, no whether you love Prime Minister Modi or you hate him, you cannot deny that the man has made his place in history, a consummate outsider to the corridors of power in Delhi till just 4 years ago. He's clearly rewritten the rules of the game. But can he repeat 2014 in 2019? I guess the jury on that is still out. But on that note, I'd like to thank our entire panel for joining us on this special broadcast. Thanks to the viewers for watching.